I didn't think much of it when she offered to hold the check. We'd just gotten our permits approved, and we're waiting on the contractor. But do you know what she said when I asked for it back? Before I share what happened next, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. We were finally going to fix the kitchen. Not just paint and patch, real work.
A proper redesign.
Open shelves. Matte white cabinets. Warm-toned butcher block counters. Nothing flashy, just something that finally felt like ours. My husband and I had saved for almost 3 years. Between birthdays, bonuses, and a few freelance gigs on the side, we'd managed to scrape together exactly $42,000. Enough for permits, cabinetry, new plumbing, and maybe one appliance upgrade if we played it smart. And since we lived just outside Columbus, where home values had started creeping up again, it felt like a good investment too. The check was made out to cash because our contractor requested staggered payments in phases. Materials up front, labor after inspection, that kind of thing. We'd just gotten city approval that week. Everything was finally aligned. And then came the dinner at Linda's. My mother-in-law had made her usual Sunday roast, dry as always. After dessert, she asked if we had everything in place for the reno. I told her we were just waiting for a start date. That's when she leaned in, napkins still folded in her lap. "If you don't want that check sitting around, I can hold on to it in my safe until you're ready," she said, all smiles. God forbid something happens, or it gets misplaced. These things are tricky. I hesitated, but Jason nodded almost immediately. "She's right," he said. "Better safe than sorry." I didn't want to argue in front of his mom. So I folded the check in half, slid it across the table, and smiled like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. The following weeks blurred together. We were deep into layout meetings, sink specs, vent hood dimensions, and Pinterest boards. But every time I asked Jason if he'd checked in with his mom about the check, he waved it off. "She'll give it to us when we're ready," he said. "It's not like she's going to run off with it." I wasn't so sure. Linda had a habit of borrowing without asking. One time she borrowed our backup car key so her hairdresser could use our SUV for a weekend retreat. Another time she listed our basement guest suite on Airbnb while we were out of town, without telling us. Still, she was Jason's mother. And I was trying to be the good daughter-in-law. The chill one. The low-drama one. But then I noticed something strange. It started with an Instagram story. I don't even follow Linda, but her neighbor Carol does, and she'd posted a boomerang of champagne glasses clinking over a granite island with the caption, "Cheers to new beginnings, Linda." That island didn't look familiar. And those weren't her old oak cabinets either. They were glossy.
White.
With brass handles. I screenshotted it. Then I made up some excuse to drop off her favorite lemon loaf that Saturday. She didn't suspect a thing. I brought the cake. She brought the lies. Her kitchen looked different. The old tile was gone. The fluorescent tube light was replaced with soft pendant lighting. And there it was, the exact faucet I had saved in my mood board. Brushed gold. Gooseneck. $419 at Home Depot. "Oh, just a little spruce up," she said, waving it off. The old stuff was making me depressed. I stood in her doorway, watching light glint off the new quartz countertop. My jaw tightened. The receipts came 2 days later. Not because she gave them to me, but because I found them, tucked inside Jason's glove box while looking for his insurance card. Viking. Sub-Zero. Marble tile. Delivery fees. Total, $41,632. The same week I had called the contractor to lock our schedule, she had already finished hers. Jason was quiet when I showed him. Then he said, "Well, she probably meant to pay it back. Maybe she just needed it faster than we did." I just nodded. And that night, I opened my laptop and started sketching a different kind of plan. One that didn't need a single cabinet. I didn't say anything to Linda after that. Not a word about the receipts, or the matching faucet, or the $42,000 she had quietly funneled into her own marble-drenched redesign. Silence became my strategy. She thought that made her safe. What she didn't know was that silence in a woman like me doesn't mean surrender. It means I'm taking notes. The real change started slow. Internal. Like an emotional renovation no one else could see. I stopped sending her updates about the house. No more texts about zoning approvals or cabinet samples, or that reclaimed wood store I loved in German Village. I could feel her fishing sometimes, asking things like, "Any progress on your little project?" with a smirk over lukewarm coffee. I'd smile and say, "We're figuring it out." What I meant was, "I'm figuring you out." Jason was still stuck in the purgatory between loyalty and logic. He wasn't defending her exactly, but he also wasn't confronting her. That told me everything I needed to know. "You know how she is," he'd say, like it was a weather report. Like betrayal was a forecast you just waited out. At work, I started picking up extra freelance shifts. UX design contracts. Mock-ups for a real estate site. Anything that could quietly refill the hole she had drilled into our renovation fund. I didn't tell Jason. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I was starting to realize we weren't playing the same game. He wanted to keep peace. I wanted to build something solid, with or without him. Around that same time, Linda started posting more. Photos of her updated space, hashtags like #blessed and #empty nester upgrade. It felt surgical, like each post was her way of publicly removing me from the narrative. She'd tag her daughter, her friends, even Carol next door, but never once mentioned how she got the money. She knew. She just didn't think I'd ever make her own it. Then came Thanksgiving. Linda invited everyone as usual. Jason's siblings, the grandkids, even Carol and her weird boyfriend who always brought vegan stuffing and relationship drama. I didn't want to go. But sometimes, a room tells you more when you stand in it silently than when you avoid it entirely. So I went, dressed in black, hair pulled tight, neutral makeup, controlled, understated, unreadable. The kitchen was pristine, like a magazine spread. I watched her pour wine near the same Viking stove I had once cried over in my saved folders. She didn't make eye contact, but her voice got louder whenever she said things like custom cabinetry or imported backsplash. Carol kept nodding like she was auditioning to be adopted. And then Linda turned to me and said, "It must be hard watching someone else finish a project you started." My fork paused midair. There it was. The smirk, the taunt, the unspoken dare. I swallowed slowly and smiled. I've always believed in finishing what you start. You know, eventually. I watched the color shift in her cheeks. Just enough. Then I excused myself and started clearing plates.
Quiet.
Efficient. Controlled demolition always begins at the edges. That night, while Jason snored next to me, I made my final decision. I wasn't going to chase the kitchen anymore. I was going to redesign something bigger, my boundaries. The next morning, I emailed the contractor and canceled the entire remodel. Instead, I started making quiet changes to the house, ones that didn't cost $42,000 but made me feel human again. I swapped the dining chairs, repainted the walls in soft almond cream, donated the dusty bar cart we never used, decluttered every drawer. It was less about the furniture and more about reclaiming oxygen. One night, I stood barefoot in the center of our small, imperfect kitchen, slicing pears for a crumble, and I realized I didn't hate the space. I hated what it represented. False promises. Unbalanced power.
Complicity.
But the space itself? It still had potential.
So did I.
Then came the message. It was from Linda. Just a one-liner.
Need to talk.
In person. Tomorrow?
No emojis. No barmupese.
I stared at it for a long time. Then I replied, "Sure." She arrived with a folder. It was navy blue. Heavy. She didn't sit down at first. Just hovered near the counter, scanning the kitchen like a realtor seeing a listing that hadn't moved in months. "I wanted to explain," she said finally. "Explain," I echoed flat. "I needed the update," she said. "For my mental health. The old kitchen was suffocating me." I told myself I'd replace the funds once my trust dispersed in January. I didn't interrupt. She placed the folder on the counter. "I talked to my lawyer," she added. "The trust paid early. I want to make it right." I opened the folder. A cashier's check sat in the middle. $44,000. "Interest," she said. I didn't touch it. Instead, I asked the only question that mattered. Would you have told me if I hadn't found out? She blinked, looked down. I don't know. There it was, the real truth. Not in her apology, but in the pause.
She didn't know.
Because she hadn't planned to. I eventually took the check. Not because I forgave her, but because I'd earned that money twice now. Once when I saved it, and once when I stood in my own dignity long enough for her to notice the absence. And yet, I still didn't deposit it. Not yet. The check sat untouched for weeks. Folded neatly in a drawer next to expired coupons, curtain swatches, and the old warranty for a toaster we no longer owned. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the shape of the apology and what was missing from it. She never said, "I knew it was wrong." She never said, "I'm sorry I took what wasn't mine." She said, "I needed it," as if that justified the theft. And Jason, he never said much at all. We started feeling like roommates. He'd come home, kiss my cheek, and ask what was for dinner with the same casual detachment someone might use at a hotel buffet. He asked once, just once, if I planned to cash the check. I said, "Not yet." He didn't ask again. What does it mean when someone doesn't offend you, but also doesn't stop you from bleeding? That's what I kept asking myself. His loyalty was like a dimmer switch, always halfway down, always flickering towards silence. But I didn't need his approval for what came next. Because soft revenge doesn't announce itself. It moves like steam, quiet, invisible, reshaping the room without a single slammed door. So I started small. I took the check to the bank. Not to deposit it, but to convert it into smaller instruments. 3 money orders, $12,000, $10,000, and $22,000. Each one marked with a different memo. Boundary redesign. Silence tax. Kitchen Fund 2.0. Then I opened a new account. In my name only. I didn't hide it from Jason. I just didn't volunteer it. It felt fitting. After all, no one had warned me when $42,000 walked out the door. That same week, Linda invited us to her kitchen blessing brunch. A small gathering of friends and family to celebrate her emotional healing through design. She even hired a local food stylist to arrange the bagels into color-coded tiers. The invitation felt like a slap wrapped in lavender-scented paper. Jason thought we should go, just to keep things civil. I said I'd think about it. Instead, I made my own plan. Sunday morning, while Jason was ironing his shirt for brunch, I walked out the door with my keys and a small white box in hand. Inside was my original contractor agreement. Not the canceled one. The first one, with all the upgrades and layout plans. I'd printed it on thick linen paper, tied it with a soft gray ribbon, and I drove it straight to Linda's house. She was in the middle of arranging mimosa garnishes when I showed up. Her eyes widened. "I thought you weren't coming early." "I'm not staying," I said, placing the box on her new marble island. She looked down at it. "What's this?" "Your design inspiration," I said. She opened it slowly, like she knew it wouldn't be good. Inside, she found every detail of my dream kitchen. The lighting choices, the cabinet sketches, the exact Viking range model, the one she now owned. I didn't flinch. I thought it might help your guests understand where the vision came from. Her mouth opened, then closed again. I didn't wait for a reaction. I turned and left, stepping over her entry rug like it was a fire I'd finally walked through. Jason called me 20 minutes later. "Did you really leave her blueprints?" "No," I said. I left her the truth. He didn't know what to say to that. And I didn't fill the silence for him. That night, we didn't talk much. He scrolled. I read. The distance wasn't new. It was just finally undeniable. Later, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan, wondering how much of my life had been designed around trying to please people who mistook kindness for currency. The next morning, I made 2 decisions. 1. I scheduled therapy. 2. I applied for a UX design grant that would send me to Seattle for 3 months. Fully paid. Housing included. I hadn't told anyone I applied. I just knew I needed out. Not forever. Just long enough to remember who I was before I became the daughter-in-law who plays nice. A week later, the acceptance email came in. I read it 3 times, then again out loud, just to hear it said back to me. You've been chosen. Your work stood out. We're excited to support your next chapter. I cried in the bathroom. Not loud sobs. Just quiet tears that rolled down my cheeks like they were taking something toxic with them. When I told Jason, he blinked like I'd said something in another language. For 3 months. Yes. In Seattle? Yes. But what about the kitchen? I smiled. It's staying exactly the same. I just won't be in it. Linda never brought up the box again. But Carol posted a photo from the brunch. And in the background, blurred but unmistakable, sat a white box with a gray ribbon, half open on the countertop. I didn't comment. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply showing someone the mirror and walking away before they speak. Seattle didn't change me.
It reminded me.
Reminded me of what it felt like to walk without being watched. To eat alone without being asked who else was coming. To wake up in a space that didn't echo someone else's expectations. The apartment was small, sleek, and silent in all the right ways. I didn't decorate much, just a few thrifted prints and a cheap little lemon tree I kept by the window. It was the first place I'd ever lived in where nothing had been gifted, borrowed, or guilt-tripped into my hands. Everything in it had been chosen by me, for me. The UX design program kept me busy. We worked with nonprofits, small businesses, even a local museum that needed an online exhibit reimagined. I loved it. I didn't love every day. Some days I felt like a ghost in a borrowed city, but the kind of ghost that could slip through walls and find her own way out. Linda texted once. Hope you're doing well. Jason says hi. I didn't respond. Not out of malice. Just distance. The kind that grows when you realize you're finally out of someone's gravitational pull. Jason, to his credit, didn't fight the space. He sent a few check-ins, asked about the weather, shared a photo of the dog, but never once asked when I was coming back. And maybe that was the real answer. One afternoon, I took a solo walk along Alki Beach. The sky was overcast, typical Pacific Northwest mood. The ocean stretched gray and glassy, and gulls dipped in and out of view like living punctuation marks. I sat on a driftwood bench, pulled out my phone, and finally opened the folder I had saved since before I left Ohio. Kitchen Fund 2.0. Inside were sketches, budget breakdowns, modular designs for smaller, multi-purpose spaces. But this time, none of it was for my kitchen. It was a proposal. A grant-funded pilot program I'd been quietly building, design assistance for low-income families trying to upgrade unsafe or outdated kitchens with affordable, durable options.
No marble. No Viking.
Just safe wiring, accessible layouts, clean light. I called it second serving. The softest revenge is sometimes the one that feeds others first. I got approval to test the program in Seattle. And when the pilot launched, I emailed Jason. Subject line. I used the money. Just not on tile. The body of the email was short. Thought you might want to know where the $44,000 went. It started something better than a kitchen. Hope you're doing well. He replied 3 days later. I never doubted you'd do something meaningful. I just regret I didn't stand up for you sooner.
No signature.
Just silence afterward. A familiar, unfinished space. I stayed in Seattle longer than planned. The program grew. I grew with it. I started writing again, not essays or blog posts, just small, honest things. Memories. Internal blueprints. I wrote about the first time Linda ever dismissed me with a compliment. You're so calm. You're like wallpaper. No drama. I had smiled then, thinking it was praise. Now I realized she wasn't celebrating my peace. She was relying on my silence. But I wasn't wallpaper anymore. Months passed. I was walking through Pike Place one afternoon when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. A voicemail followed. It was Carol. Hey, this is kind of awkward, but Linda's organizing a charity dinner. Says it's for women in transition, new beginnings, that kind of thing. Your name came up. She's trying, I guess. Said something about wanting to donate. Just thought you should know. I never called back. But I looked up the event later, and sure enough, there it was. A silent auction for second serving. Someone had submitted a basket of kitchen goods in my name. I didn't need to know who. Some stories don't need a second confrontation, just a second chance to mean something different. I never rebuilt my kitchen, but I built myself. I rebuilt the way I spoke to myself when I was tired. I rebuilt the friendships I'd let fade in the shadow of keeping everyone else comfortable. I rebuilt my mornings with lemon tea, my weekends with messy hair and no explanations, and my worth around more than just who I kept forgiving. Linda still hosts her brunches. Jason still lives in the house, where the kitchen hums with my stolen design. But I don't resent it, because some people renovate their homes to feel powerful, and some of us renovate our lives, quietly, completely, without needing anyone to clap for it. She took my $42,000 kitchen fund, but I kept the blueprint and built something she'll never be able to renovate away.